Now, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome along to this week's edition of The Words You Don't Know with myself, Mik O'Connell. And tonight I have a great show lined up here. I have a wonderful guest coming on now from Estepona in Spain, a gentleman called Ole Dammegard. And I'll do a little brief bio of who Ole is. Ole is a Danish researcher, investigator, basically, and he's been looking into global assassinations and the general global agenda that you hear me talking about constantly on my show for basically the last 30 years. Now, he's most renowned for a book that he wrote called Coup d'etat in Slow Motion. Now, unfortunately, it's not a book I have read. I've only recently come across Ole, and I've heard him on a few radio shows, and I decided I'd like to get this chap on my show because he's quite the guest, folks. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight to Ole. Are you there, Ole?
I sure am.
Listen, you're very, very welcome along to the Words You Don't Know show, and I'm delighted to have you on. This is the first foreign guest that I've had on my show, so I'm absolutely delighted it's you. I haven't been aware of you for too long, but I have listened to a couple of your previous radio shows, namely the ones you've done on Red Eyes Creations and with OAM, Alan and Steve over here in Ireland.
Well, I'm really happy to be on your show. I feel really honoured, thank you.
Right, that's brilliant. Well, I mean, you're very welcome onto the show. Now, Ole, I'll give a little brief intro there. I was supposed to play the news, but unfortunately I couldn't get the system to work, but I will try play it at 1:30. Your book, Coup d'etat in Slow Motion. Do you want to give me a little brief background of what the book is about? I know it's in relation to the Swedish Prime Minister who was assassinated. Now, that was something I wasn't aware of, because here over in Western Europe we would hear more about the assassination of JFK, but you go on to say that all these global assassinations that have been carried out over the last 50 years are nearly all linked in some way or another.
According to my research, that is absolutely true. And when I started out, like you said, about 30 years ago, I had absolutely no idea that this was the case. It's been over all of these years of very deep research that I've suddenly found out that I've been able to connect the dots, and I found heavy evidence that even the same people, some of the same people that were in Dealey Plaza in 1963 were actually in Stockholm 3 years later in Stockholm when they took out the Swedish Prime Minister. These people I'm talking about, it's a small group of top skilled assassins that has been used since the late 50s all the way up until today almost, and they have been involved in the JFK, Robert Kennedy, the Martin Luther King, the Che Guevara killing, the overtake of Salvador Allende, the killing of Pablo Neruda in Chile as well. They were responsible for the killing of Robert Smith in South Africa, Uwe Barschel in West Germany, and so many other incidents and terror acts globally.
When you say they, who are they? Are you talking about what would we commonly call the Illuminati?
What I'm talking about is the hit team on a street level.
Right.
You know, you got in this power pyramid, this global power pyramid, you got the people up near the top of the pyramid or in the top of the pyramid where the orders come from, where they give the orders to when somebody has become a problem, either one of their own members or an enemy, and then the order goes down through the pyramid of power. Down to the people that have to execute it, and these people have absolutely no idea where the order came from, why they are killing this person or whatever. They just follow orders, they get supplied with money, weapons, all of these type of things, and they just carry it out. And the they I'm talking about in this instance is a group called Operation 40. That was created in the late 50s, early 1960s under President Dwight Eisenhower. What they wanted was a group of, like a killing machine they could use globally, so that wherever they had a problem with a foreign prime minister or president or whatever, or just an enemy they wanted to get rid of, they could use this team of assassins. And Dwight Eisenhower gave his vice president, Richard Nixon, the task of creating this group, and he did that together with some seasoned veterans from the CIA, people like David Atlee Phillips, Howard Hunt, and the group themselves, they down to Miami, where they recruited a lot of mostly Cubans that had escaped from Cuba when Fidel Castro took over. These people, to start with, there was about 86 of them. One of them was a woman, and they were trained in everything from jungle warfare to explosives to poisons to you name it. And they were very central in the JFK assassination.
Now, can I just say, in relation to the JFK assassination, I seen a documentary many years ago online called JFK to the Bush Connection, and it put forward an extremely convincing case to me anyway, that the Bush family were directly involved in the assassination of JFK on behalf of basically the Federal Reserve System, the elite banking industry.
It's more complex than that, but yes, the Bush family, they're extremely central in I would say so many of the atrocities that's going on ever since the 50s and onwards, even before then. And actually George Bush Sr. was the paymaster of this group of assassins, Operation 40. He was the paymaster that were funneling the funds from the military-industrial complex, but also from many different companies like Standard Oil, United Fruits, and then many of the members in the global elite, including oil tycoons from Texas and so on. But he was the actual paymaster.
Okay, what do you believe was the reason that they took JFK out?
When it comes to these big conspiracies, the really big ones, there's always a lot more than one reason. I would say when it comes to JFK was that when you look at the power behind the assassination, it's a combination of the mob, the CIA, the Secret Service, the Dallas Police, the military-industrial complex, and other big company interest on a global scale. And the reason why he was taken out the reasons were, like you said, he wanted to get out of this strangle that the Federal Reserve, this very, very criminal organization, private organization, that is keeping a major part of the global population by the throat financially. He wanted to get out of that grip and start printing their own money, interest-free. He also wanted to withdraw out of Vietnam, which was an absolute incredible shock for the whole military-industrial complex, also connected to global drug trading. We're talking, that is one of the main reasons that they got involved in the Vietnam War, was to get close to the Golden Triangle, and then through the war being able to transport the drugs into the States and other countries.
Now, can I ask you, in some of your interviews, you go on to explain that, like, all of these global assassinations are somehow linked, either by method or by the way they're covered up afterwards. Do you think it's all connected, even up to today, to what's going on in the world globally today?
Very much so. I would be resistant to say all of it, but a major part of it, as far as I've been able to find out, is connected. All these things that we think have nothing to do with each other are linked together behind the scenes. And this is why I'm very, very optimistic after all of these 30 years, because as far as I've been able to find out, it's a very small group of people that are behind so many of these atrocities and this global mayhem that is going on. So if we can only expose this group and make it stop, then automatically the world will take a step for the better, a big step forward.
Now, can I ask you a question? Are you aware of a gentleman called Benjamin Fulford?
Yeah.
Now, I follow his blog, and the only reason I tend to follow it, a lot of people tend to call him a crackpot online and stuff like that, because he doesn't really make public appearances. You tend to get these videos out on YouTube that it's a synthesized voice that's reading out the blogs that he puts out. But the reason I follow him mainly is because his credentials tend to check out, if you look him up online, that he did work for Forbes magazine. He was their Asia Bureau chief, basically. And he managed to bag a good hour-long interview with one of the Rockefellers, with David Rockefeller. So I'm saying to myself, if he's able to bag an interview with one of the Rockefellers, he obviously has some serious connections. And he goes on to claim in his blogs that there's a war going on at the very top of the echelons of power between the East and the West. In the West, he'd phrase it as the Illuminati, and in the East, the White Dragon Society. And what he claims is the White Dragon Society want to rid the world of the Illuminati and make the world, a utopia that everybody seeks, a world of peace and tranquility for everybody.
I tell you, when it comes to his appearance, if we take that first, I totally believe in his credentials, in the truth of his words and so on. His appearance is very often that he looks paranoid and somewhat afraid. And I tell you, if you have been up against these people like the people I've been facing and the forces, there's no wonder if he's been scared and paranoid and all of these things for a good reason, because there's so many people that have been taken out, and he has put himself in the line of fire big time. So I can totally understand if he looks weird, if he looks worn out, if he's dark under the eyes and look paranoid. When it comes to the East and the West, I know most of this through him, so I don't know so much about the East part of this, but I do believe that the Western part, the Illuminati, that is cracking down, is falling apart now because there's such an amendment going on globally, exposing what's going on, because this power elite, or I call them the minority, because they're like a few thousand. They've been able to get away with all of these awful things for so many years, just because we have not been aware. So many of us have been totally asleep, and they've been able to pull the strings from behind the curtains and in the darkness. And now the spotlight is being aimed at them. I think the future looks wonderful.
Now, can you tell me as well? I think your journey on this truth quest, I mean, it's just a term I'll use just to cover, your last 30 years of research, began, I suppose, with the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that was something I wasn't aware of.
No, it began with the JFK assassination. Okay. That was the one that I got into the whole thing with. And I read, I don't know, a couple of hundred books. I saw everything I could get hold of. I got more or less obsessed trying to find out what had happened that day, because that assassination is like a masterpiece when it comes to these conspiracies. It's layered, and still 50 years down the line, there's still so many mysteries involved. So they did a great job with that one. But the more I got into that, the more interested I became of the Robert Kennedy assassination, the Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, and so on. And after a while, I started to almost become aware of like a template that they were using, that the assassination was carried out in different ways, but the template and the cover-up was being almost done identically. So I started looking at it from a higher point of level, looking upon it like if there was a possibility that these events could actually be connected. And the more I dug into it, the clearer it became that it was the same power elite that was behind this. I say this after 30 years. This took me so many years to find out. But during these years, the Swedish Prime Minister, Olof Palme, was gunned down in the streets of Stockholm. And as usual, it was done by a lone crazy guy. At least that's the official story. And I would suggest that every time you hear the word lone nut or lone crazy guy, you should put a big question mark to whatever it is they're trying to push down your throat, because this is part of the template. And the reason they use this lone nut or crazy guy or for these assassinations is because if the assailant is alone, then there's no planning behind the crime. There's no conspiracy, because a conspiracy is two or more people deliberately planning a crime. So if he's alone, there's no conspiracy, and if he's crazy, there's no motive. So you don't have to dig into it. He was crazy. He just went out, shot the guy, boom, case closed. So most of the times with these lone nuts that are absolutely, totally innocent, all of them are innocent. They're just being used as the fall guy for this. So what they try is to get the guy get him shut down, either killed or put away forever in a jail or so on. So, and this is the way they put together these assassination teams, and also the investigation of these major crimes. When there's this type of conspiracy, the investigation is part of the crime. The investigation is made up by people involved in the assassination. Very important to understand.
Which means the investigation is going to go nowhere.
that's the whole task.
Yeah.
The task is for them to, as soon as the shots are fired, they move in, they knock out all normal, honest, decent police detectives and investigators. They're just pushed to the side. This own investigation that mainly consists of people that they control through Freemasonry or other ways, political ways. They go in there, and the only task they have is to point. They went that way, they went that way, they went that, and point at the patsy. It's a patsy, it's a patsy, it's a patsy, and it's like a wall you're up against when you're an investigator or a private person. You will just be met by denial, and it's like a wall of the word no, 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 no. But that investigation is always also dangerous for people like myself, because it's the investigation. If you keep approaching them and keep pushing, they will then indirectly have you taken care of, either beaten up or harassed or suicided or accidents, these type of things. But so it's a very scary thing to become aware of, and I myself, I lost 2 friends that was murdered, and I had to leave Sweden because I felt very threatened there. So this is why I'm in Spain at the moment.
Okay, well listen, I need to go to a break, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that as well when I come back. So I'll be back in 2 minutes with Ole, folks. So if you just hang on there, Ole, and if you don't mind, would you mute your microphone for the next couple of minutes? That'd be great, thanks. Folks, I'll be back in 2 minutes with Ole. Hello, are you still with me, Ole?
I sure am.
That's brilliant. Just before the break there, you were explaining to me that you did live in Sweden, even though I believe you were born in Denmark, is that correct?
I was born in Denmark in a family that was very much involved in the resistance movement against the Nazi occupation during the Second World War. And I grew up with all these stories about how important it is to stand up against whatever is being suppressed or pushed upon you in the form of lies or occupation or so on. Then when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old, we emigrated to Sweden, and that's where I spent quite a lot of years. I used to work as a journalist there and so on.
Right, and then you moved to Sweden then. Now, you were saying there just before the break that you felt your life was in danger in Sweden because of the investigative work you were doing. Can you tell me what happened?
No, we were a small group of people that was private people that was very, very concerned about what happened with the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister, because it was very apparent after just a year or so that something very wrong was going on. And once I started seeing the same signs as in the other assassinations, I just felt, my God, I need to go there. So I moved to Stockholm. I started working as a bus driver. I took whatever jobs I could just to be able to do as much research as possible. And I joined a small group of private people. Like I said, there were former lawyers, former police officers, and just ordinary people as well that was really trying to find out what actually happened that day in Stockholm. And for many years, I just did. I approached as many of them as possible to learn as much, because they were doing very heavy research, many of them. And in Sweden, I tracked down, I would say, more or less everybody who was involved in the assassination, which is in my book, Coup d'etat in Slow Motion. I've got all the names, the photos, the whole thing. It was not a Swedish assassination. It was a global conspiracy behind it, with an international hit team on site taking him out with local backup.
What do you think the reason for taking him out was? What was he doing politically at that time that was a threat, I suppose, to the global elite, that they felt the need to have him taken out?
I tell you, I gave a 9-hour interview on Red Eye's Creations on this assassination, because it is so complex, so multi-layered. So I prefer not answering that just with a quick answer, because there are more than one answer to it. But he was, one of the reasons he was taken out was he was part of the elite as well. He was a Bilderberger. He was a member of the Committee of 300 and so on. And they really came to a point where they thought that he was not trustworthy anymore, that he was totally working against them. And that is one of the reasons that people from NATO, international Swedish interest and so on, decided to take him out.
Right, so like you said, it's a global conspiracy to assassinate him, and just like JFK's, it is extremely multi-layered. So, I mean, whether you'll ever get to the truth or not is anybody's guess.
Since I've been looking into so many different assassinations, the JFK and the Olof Palme, these are the two, they're on the same level when it comes to complexity. Both of them blamed on a lone patsy, but that is absolutely not the real truth.
No, I mean, the official JFK story, that was completely debunked anyway. You know, if anybody wants to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald had anything to do with that, I mean, he might have been involved at some small level, but he certainly wasn't the trigger man.
No, he was not involved at all. He was actually trying to stop the whole assassination. So in my eyes, after 30 years, and I tell you, I have looked into this assassination big time, and he was more of a hero than anything else. And that is also one of the reasons they took him out, because he knew too much.
Right, it's very interesting. Now listen, I want to fast forward to what's going on globally at the moment. This new terror group, ISIS, what do you make of them? Do you think it's all made up?
It's to be able to carry out what is called the New World Order. They need a boogeyman. That is what it's standard for all of these operations that they carry out. They need a boogeyman. They need someone to blame on. They need an enemy from the outside. And so in the Cold War, there was the Russians, the East Germans, then they started using the Muslims, and then Al-Qaeda, they made up Al-Qaeda, which is a total CIA creation. And then Al-Qaeda has become more and more exposed of being just that. And now they just changed the name of the whole operation, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I understand, it's just a different name of the same boogeyman that they use as an excuse to continue carrying out their agenda.
I mean, I'd never heard of ISIS. I mean, the first time I heard of them was about 2-3 months ago. I was sitting at home and...
It's the same for you and everyone else.
Yeah,
Nobody had heard a word.
I was just flicking through the news, and next thing on Sky News, they come out with this new terrorist group overtaking Iraq called ISIS. And when I heard the name ISIS, because I'd looked so much into symbology and ancient religions and stuff like that, first thing that came into my head was ISIS, wife of Osiris, god of war.
There you go.
You know, so and I thought to myself, you couldn't make this up. This is how desperate they're getting. I mean, it's almost comical.
But it is, once you start seeing into many of these things that they carry out, it's become so sloppy because I think they're getting very, very stressed, for time because of this awakening that is going on. So they're just trying to pull it off, more and more and more and more. Like these, in the old days, they really put a lot of effort into conspiracies, a good budget, skilled people, good time to prepare, so on, when it came to JFK, 9/11, and these type of major ones, like Scare of the Week. They need to keep people scared all the time. So you have all these mass shootings on a weekly basis, and now they're just spreading it.
Yeah.
And so people, the whole idea is to get you shit scared. That there's terrorists, that there awful things, to be able to push forward this agenda. And the agenda is to create a one world, one central world, a one global fascist state, actually, without borders, with a one world army.
Now, if we have a one world army...
By the NATO and sorry?
If we have a one world army, people say, but if there's only a one world army, who's the enemy? And, I tend to, I just tell people, well, it's you, the people. There is no other enemy.
It's not there to defend us. It is there to control us. This is the scary thing. Not control, And they want a one-world digital currency, once again, to control us, because once you don't have the normal notes and coins, if your credit card doesn't work, what do you do?
You're going to start.
The one that controls the computer controls your life. I tell you, this is a very scary. And I've just come back from Sweden. And I tell you, in Sweden, there's a lot of banks that have stopped using normal money. You can only use credit cards. Even if you go and buy groceries, if you go to the marketplace and buy vegetables, they have credit card machines as well.
Yes.
You can hardly. It is moved forward so fast in Sweden, and I think they're using Sweden because Sweden consists of a population that are very afraid of conflicts and adjust very easily, and so they test these things out there, and then if it works fine, they move it on to other countries.
Yeah, I think what they're doing in this country is, because Ireland we did have a reputation for being, a rebel country, that we'd get up and fight back, particularly against the British Empire, and I'm sure you know about our history in that respect.
Yeah.
But because our water over here is extremely heavily fluoridated, the whole bloody country is dumbed down. And like I tell people, the reason they fluoridate the water is the same reason the Nazis and Joseph Stalin did, to pacify the population.
That's the whole idea.
And they're doing
that is the whole idea. And in one way, in a sick, twisted way, you should almost feel it as a compliment because you, as far as I know, you are one of the world's most fluoridated countries.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
So,
but there's a big campaign going on in this country to eventually put a stop to the fluoridation of water.
Thank God for that, because it is pure poison. It is pure poison.
But listen, Ole, I need to go to the news now. So do you mind holding on?
For sure.
Right, folks, I'll be back in 4 minutes just after the news with Ole Dammegard. Talk to you all very soon. Now, Ole, are you still with me?
I sure am.
That's brilliant. Now, listen, I just want to get your views now on what's going on around the world over the last couple of years in relation to false flags. And two I want to mention, two of the most recent ones. The two beheading ones, the most recent being James Foley, which is most blatantly obvious. It's a fake if you have any knowledge at all of green screen technology and how green screen is used, you can see that it's a fake. And another one in particular as well that I heard you talk about as well on another radio show is the one in Woolwich in southeast London.
Do you know, one of the reasons they do these false flags, either it is to be able to carry out their agenda without opposition from the public. They secretly create a problem to get a reaction from the public, and the reaction they're looking for is always the same. That people go, oh my God, something needs to be done, and then they turn towards me, who secretly have created the problem, and then I come with a solution. And the solution is always more militarized police, more surveillance, less liberties. You have to give up your freedom, these things. Sorry?
We can see this happening now in England over the last few days. I'm sure you're well aware that the British have ramped up their terror, whatever they want to bloody call it, to severe, which they're saying basically that ISIS are imminently going to attack somewhere in the UK. Now, there's a huge NATO summit going on at the moment in Wales and Cardiff, and most of Cardiff is on lockdown. Now, I'm of the belief that something may pop off there this week, and it will be a false flag. Now, they've already increased security at the airports. They've given themselves new powers to remove people's passports from them. Now, they're saying Islamic terrorists, but we know they will broaden that to mean everybody.
I would say absolute nonsense, the whole thing. I would say total fake, all of it. But to, once again, get to your liberties, get you to give up your liberties and make it okay for them to move in with more military force and more and more control in every way of life. So I would be very aware of possible false flag operations, and also I would like to encourage people, if you see any signs of these type of things, please start filming them. Even if you see that that maybe somebody looks like they're setting up like a film set or something like that, film them, get it up, stream it up on YouTube right away, and possibly be part of stopping an operation like that. Yeah. And if by any, if it actually should happen that a false flag was pulled off in the area where you have been filming, this type of filming can be of great importance afterwards as evidence to be able to prove what actually happened.
But one of the big ones that stood out mostly for me was the Boston bombings. Within minutes, I said to myself, this is a false flag, because I was looking at some of the people lying on the ground, and they weren't behaving the way you would expect people who have just been caught up in an explosion to behave. It was like they were waiting on their cue to either move or say something or do something. And then within the next couple of days, then there was literally hundreds of photographs posted online. purporting to this fact that it was staged and it looked staged.
The thing is, when you look, when I come to a crime scene, I always use what I call Farmer Brown logic. 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if whoever comes in a white robe and a fancy title and tries to explain to me that it actually comes to 37. I know that he's lying, and there's a reason why he's lying. And if you follow that lie, it will point you towards the real truth. What is he trying to cover up? And many of these false flag operations and assassination are absolute no-brainers. I mean, if you just go in with an open mind, you start looking at the evidence on the crime scene, within minutes or within half an hour, you will find lots of things that does not make sense, that shows that something totally wrong is going on. But at the same time, the media will pump out the official story, and it doesn't matter how much proof comes forward and get exposed, the media will still pump the same story. It was the patsy, it was the patsy, it was the patsy. That, the official story, whatever that is. And with the Boston bombing, very, very obvious. Once you start looking for the signs, you start seeing, you have to look, if a bomb explodes, there's an epicenter in the center, and you just have to know about explosives to see what it does and in what direction debris flies and the destruction and so on, and you see right away, my God, doesn't make any sense at all. And the Boston bombing was just one of many.
Another one that stood out for me as well now at the time was the 7/7 bombing. And what stood out for me most about that was, at the time I was working for a roofing company, and I was driving one of their trucks, and I was actually parked on a building site and I had the radio on, and I came onto the radio, and within an hour then there was another broadcast saying that 4 men had been shot dead in Canary Wharf, and they'd only said this once, and it was never mentioned any other time on the news, and it was covered up. But one of the most outstanding things I seen that day then was a gentleman called Peter Power, who was ahead of this consultancy firm who would stage mock events for training purposes, and he came out and said that he was running a training exercise in the 3 exact same train stations where these bombs went off in London on 7/7/2005. And for him, he said the hair stood up in the back of my neck because our scenario matched exactly what went down that day. Now that's just too big of a coincidence for my liking.
It's only when you start studying these conspiracies one by one, you will start seeing this very clear pattern. And one of the parts in this pattern is the drill. They have a drill, an ongoing drill, with the exact same scenario as the terror event that is about to take place. And then this terror drill, in the middle of it, suddenly goes live, and many of the people involved in the drill has absolutely no idea that it's actually happening and why they're there. So when it comes to the 7/7 bombings, you're welcome to saw off my right arm if that was not a false flag. Total inside job. And the gentleman I wouldn't call him gentleman, but the man you just mentioned, why has he never been questioned about who that company was that hired him for these things?
Yeah, he was the head of a company called Versa Consultants, and
but he's never said it's never been exposed who was the client he was working for at that time.
Yeah, well, he just said he was working for a client in London based in offices with 1,000 people.
Yeah, I know.
That's his excuse. That's all he ever said. He's never said anything since then.
But he's just one minor part of the whole thing. But this is a man, he should be put up against the wall and questioned until he comes out with the truth, because he is very, very aware of what actually happened that day. He, among many other people. But we come up way up in the top of the pyramid before you can find the real truth, why these things were carried out and so on. But 100% false flag operation. And just like you say, when these things happen, you have to be very, very quick, right when it happened. It's the minutes after it happened and the first hour, record everything, because this will disappear like these 4 men that were shot down. They just disappeared out of thin air. You never heard of them again.
Yeah, I think what was going on there, and even John Anthony Hill, he made the documentary 7/7 Ripple Effect. I don't know if you've seen it now.
I haven't. Excellent.
Yeah, it's an excellent documentary, but he stated in that documentary that, and I do believe him, because I'd heard the news report that morning about 4 men being shot in Canary Wharf. He believes that the 4 men shot dead in Canary Wharf were the 4 guys who were named as the suicide bombers, who allegedly died on the trains and on the bus. But what he says is, they got to London, these bombs went off At the times they did, but they didn't make it down there because they'd missed a particular train somewhere else in the UK that was to bring them to London, so they couldn't have been where they were supposed to be at the times the official story said they were. And what he reckons happened was they seen all this shit going down in London, like the shit has hit the fan, there's police everywhere, there's fire engines everywhere. They knew something major had just occurred, and they realised then that this is not a drill that they believed they were a part of. And what they did was they ran down to Canary Wharf in London, because most of the newspaper media are based in Canary Wharf, all the big newspapers. So he reckons they went down there to try and get their story into a newspaper before it was too late, but unfortunately were intercepted by, you know, a rogue police team who took them all out.
I think he's very close to the truth there, at least the way I see it. And the thing you will also see with these conspiracies is that there's a cleanup team that follows, you know, whatever loose ends or witnesses that seem too much, or journalists that keeps pushing too much, they will be taken care of.
John Charles de Menezes, I mean, I think he'd something to do with 7/7, maybe in an engineering capacity, and they took him out as well. He was a Brazilian electrician.
This is the thing, you need to, I don't want to say anything about this guy because I haven't looked into the details around his case, but there's a lot going around, you know, around a big false flag like that one. So, and you will also see, I'm a personal friend of Chip Tatum, who was, he's a deep cover agent, CIA agent for 25 years. He's a whistleblower now, but he used to be a Night Stalker pilot. He was one of the pilots in the Iran-Contras affair. He was also the commander of a team, super secret team of assassins called Pegasus, directly under the order of George Bush Sr. I mean, not an amateur in any way, this guy. And he's also been part of different false flag operations. What he said when I asked him about these things is that he said they have almost like normal staff meetings, you know, when they planning like this, and the whole setup, how it's going to be carried out and so on. And then after the event itself, they have like a follow-up staff meeting later the same day or the next day and so on, where they check out, did we get the effect we wanted, or do we need to amplify it with another thing? And very often you will see that a similar thing happens, you know, like the beheading in the Woolwich, for instance. The very next day you had a very similar thing happening in Paris. At least they claimed there was a similar thing happening in Paris, identical almost, to just amplify the whole thing. And you will see this repeatedly when it comes to false flag operations.
Right.
One of the signs of false flags also is that many times by the major news stations and so on, just within minutes of it happening, they will push forward the solution, either if it's stricter gun control, or that it's let's go kill bin Laden or Saddam Hussein or whatever. They will point you in a direction that they want to go. That they want to. So you have to be very aware of how media is taking part of this whole thing.
Well, listen, I need to go to the last set of ads, so do you mind holding on for a couple of minutes?
For sure.
All right, folks, we'll be back in a couple of minutes with Ole. If you want to text the studio, folks, at any time, you can on 087 062 7138. You can email the show at theworldyoudon'tknow@gmail.com, or please do check out the Facebook page. It's called The World You Don't Know. Ole.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got about, say, 8 more minutes left before I have to wrap this up. I want to fast forward now to what might be coming down the line in the future. With everything that's going on now, there's a lot of talk online that the powers that be, the Illuminati, the Cabal, whatever name you want to put on them, are basically losing touch with themselves and everything else that's going on, and they're basically falling apart. This is where they appear to be getting so desperate. Like the last 6 or 7 false flags, if you want to look at all of them, have all been very sloppy. Like people like ourselves can, look at the news and see these events for what they are, that they're government perpetrated and they're trying to take people's freedoms away. Do you think they're going to get so desperate that they'll try and kick off World War III?
I have no idea. I really, really hope not to, that's for sure. But these people, I would say, when you look at the mentality behind them, it's a very sick mind. But I'm totally optimistic when it comes to these things. But I think it's very important that we are aware of these false flags that they're going to pull on us and try to distract us with and get us to buy. But it's just like you say, it's I think so many researchers, myself included, have put such an effort of exposing these false flag operations, the different templates used and so on. And due to that, so many ordinary people are waking up to the fact of what is going on. And it's also with these false flags, it's like when you have a mass shooting, it's almost like, the film Rocky. The first one was good, the second one was not so good, the third one you started getting tired of it. But then if you start to do Rocky 18, people won't buy it. You run out of themes, you run out of different scripts and so on. And it's the same with these false flags. They've used them all.
Yeah.
And now it will just repeat itself. And so I just think if we stay very focused and not buy into what they try to push us into, we're going to be fine,
Yeah, I mean, I've covered shows before now on consciousness, on the nature of consciousness. And, I've listened to documentaries, I've listened to radio shows online where people who are really into consciousness and, how the world really works, that it's all energy and we're all one, etc., etc. And what they were saying, like an event like 9/11, for example, was designed, I suppose, to try and traumatise humanity, but it didn't work because so many people.
This is the whole idea. Their tool is fear, terror, and fear, and that is how they try to control us. That is why they're pushing all this crap on us through media, through magazines, TV, you name it, is to get us down, and low in energy. Because it is. Only when we're high in energy, that is where we have real power within ourselves and so on, and that is what they fear. So very often I try to boost people, to show them how to fill their hearts with gratitude for what they have, whatever. Even if you're in a very bad situation, you can always find things to be very grateful for if you start. Open up your heart, fill your heart with gratitude, go out, help people. There are always people in need of help. Because this will also boost the energy, If you can give without expecting to get anything in return, if it's a free gift, whatever you help with or give or whatever, the receiver will lift as well, energy-wise. He will be boosted by it.
I always feel that if I do, a kind act for someone, I mean, you could be driving down the street and you'll see an old lady trying to change the wheel on her car, so, you pull over and you get out and you change the wheel. And I have done that, like in car parks, and I've always felt great about it, And you'll go and you tell somebody else that about what you've done and how it made you feel, and it tends to perk them up a little bit then as well.
It's so easy, You can just go out, take somebody's garbage without them knowing it, clean their garden when they're not home, so when they come home, you just think they start believing in miracles. Pay the pay road, for the car that comes after you, or pay the coffee for someone you don't know without them knowing it. When you leave the coffee shop, just say, well, the guy in the corner over there, I pay his coffee as well. It's only a few cents or a pound or something like that. It can make a massive difference in that person's life. And just spread it, because that will boost you and it will boost other people. And this is the way, the more empowered we are, the more difficult it is for them to control us. And this is also why they poison your water, all those things, to keep you low in energy, because they are very aware of energies, and that is why they fear it.
Are you aware, Ole, of the pineal gland?
Yeah.
And the fact that, well, I'm not saying it's a fact because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a brain doctor, but I mean, I've learned an awful lot of stuff about the pineal gland over the years. And, the great mystics will say, well, your pineal gland is what allows you to get in touch with your higher self, to communicate with the spirit world, to communicate with the oneness, I suppose. And I believe, because growing up, we had these ads bombarded at us on TV about milk, saying them bones need calcium. And, of course, growing up, well, your bones need calcium, let's drink lots of milk. But then I started saying stuff as an adult about the pineal gland and the fact that it won't work if it's calcified. And then I'd look back to those ads and say, no wonder they were telling us to drink so much milk. And then you've got the fluoridation of the water, which has a similar effect on the brain as well.
We're so out of balance at the moment, we need to get back in balance, need to get back, back to nature, veggies, the greener they are, the fresher they are, fresh water, fresh everything, and get out of this whole thing, because we're being attacked from all different directions at the moment, through food, through the air, through water, through media, they're trying to get to us, you know. And the stronger we are, the harder it is for them to control us. And I would say it's a mind game, and whatever they push on us, whenever they try to throw at us, just the more you can stay in what I call love, in the frequency of love, a very, very high frequency, and not buy into fear mode, the better off you are.
I mean, John Lennon...
Sorry?
John Lennon famously said, and he's quoted as saying, I mean, it's in his songs, when he's singing about give peace a chance, he was saying, you know, if the world wants peace, all you got to do is think about peace and it will happen. And I think that's one of the main reasons he was taken out, because he has such a huge following. If he was able to get the whole world thinking on those grounds, the Illuminati, call them what you like, wouldn't stand a bloody chance.
If you become aware of the power of your mind and how creative your thoughts are, then you will also find out how important it is to focus on the thing that you want to accomplish, to focus on peace, to focus on all the beautiful things in life, and get out of the trouble mode, you know, the depressed mode where you only think of yourself and me, mine, and my problems, and so on.
Well, it's like David Icke says, everything in the universe is just an illusion. The only truth that exists in the universe is love. And I get that. Like, I do get that quote, you know. It makes an awful lot of sense, because, you know, if you hate somebody, or you tell yourself you hate somebody, well, you only think you hate them. But I mean, if you've got a child, a little baby, and you love that child, you know deep down, you feel it, it's there, you know you love that child. It's not an illusion.
Do you know, my website is called Light on Conspiracies, and this is the angle I come from, you know, from the angle of love. I'm not here to spread fear or hate or anything like that. I come from love, but by exposing these dark corners, because it is almost like there's this cancer growth that is is trying to kill this beautiful body, if you look at the world. And we need to expose this cancer growth, you know, and stop it from spreading, because otherwise it will take us down.
And it will. Well, Ole, listen, I've come up to the very last minute, so I will have to part company with you. And I'd just like to say on behalf of myself, the show, I'm the only person on the show, but on behalf of the World You Don't Know and my listeners, thank you very, very much for coming on.
You're most welcome, and anytime I'm right here, you know.
And your website is lightonconspiracies.com.
That's the one.
That's brilliant. Ole, until I talk to you again in the future, and I do hope to do so, thanks very much.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, and goodbye. Talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was Ole Dammegard, an absolutely fantastic guest and an absolutely eye-opening interview. He's absolutely great. Now, it was a brilliant interview, and I really, really enjoyed it. Folks, this has been The World You Don't Know, so until next week, be kind to yourself, and I shall talk to you all soon. And hopefully, folks, with the wonders of Skype, now that I have Skype on the system, I do have some good interviews lined up. I do have a lady coming on next week, a lady called Karen Quinn Tostados. You can look her up on unitedwestrike.com, and she'll be coming on to talk about pretty much similar things, about what's going on around the world and what we're not being told by the mainstream media. So until next week, folks, take care and be kind to yourself, and I'll talk to you all very soon.